There's a specific kind of faded that concrete does, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Not dirty, exactly. Not stained in obvious spots. Just washed out. Grayed over. Flat and lifeless, like all the color quietly drained out of it while you weren't paying attention. My driveway got there so gradually that I genuinely couldn't remember it ever looking any other way, and I'd more or less accepted it as the natural condition of old concrete. Then, a guy who'd spent his career restoring concrete surfaces walked past my house, stopped, looked at the slab for maybe 5 seconds, and told me something that flipped my entire understanding of the problem. He said my driveway wasn't faded at all. It was covered. And what I was reading as the color of aged concrete was actually a film of accumulated grime so even, so uniform, and so gradual that I'd mistaken it for the concrete itself. That single reframe is the whole key to this, and almost nobody understands it, which is exactly why so many people throw money at the wrong solution. When most of us think of a dirty driveway, we picture obvious stains, a dark oil blotch, a streak of mildew, a patch where leaves sat and left their mark. Those are easy to recognize as dirt because they contrast with the concrete around them. But the far more common problem, the one that makes a driveway look old and tired across its entire surface, isn't spots at all. It's a uniform, all-over layer of fine grime that builds up so evenly and so slowly that there's no contrast anywhere to tip you off. Your eye has nothing to compare it against, so your brain quietly files the whole washed-out gray under, "This is just what my concrete looks like now." You stop seeing it as dirt entirely. You see it as age. And that misread is the reason people spend thousands trying to fix a surface that was never actually damaged in the first place. To understand why concrete fades this way, you have to understand what concrete actually is, because nearly everyone pictures it wrong. When you look at a driveway, your brain reads it as solid, dense, sealed stone. But structurally, concrete is far closer to a hard sponge. The entire slab is riddled with a network of microscopic pores and channels, tiny openings running down into the material, invisible to the eye but present absolutely everywhere across the surface. And that porous structure is the whole reason driveways fade instead of just getting spotty. Every airborne particle that settles on the concrete, every bit of dust, every trace of pollen, every microscopic speck of exhaust and pollution and organic debris gradually works its way down into those pores. Rain drives it deeper. Tires press it in. Damp mornings help it soak. And because this happens uniformly across the entire surface, particle by particle, season after season, the result isn't a stain in one spot. It's an even, all-over dimming of the whole slab as those countless pores fill with fine grime and the true color of the concrete disappears underneath a layer you can no longer distinguish from the concrete itself. Now, before we continue, if you're tired of wasting money on driveway cleaners that don't work, I wrote a 44-page guide called The Concrete Rescue Playbook. It covers stain removal, concrete restoration, and simple ways to clean old driveways without causing damage. It's discounted by 56% this month, so you can get it for just $17.99 through the link below. All right, let's keep going. So people get out a stiff brush and some soapy water and scrub until their arms give out, and they lift maybe the faintest top skim of the film, while the grime packed down in the pores sits completely untouched. The surface looks marginally cleaner while it's wet, then dries right back to the same tired gray. And pressure washing, the method everyone treats as the definitive answer, is attacking the wrong depth entirely. A pressure washer blasts a thin, forceful sheet of water across the surface, and it's genuinely good at removing whatever sits loose on top. But it has no real way to reach down into the pores and draw out the fine grime that has soaked deep into the material. It cleans the very top and leaves the buried layer intact, which is exactly why a pressure-washed driveway can look bright and revived while it's soaking wet and then dry, back to nearly the same faded gray a couple of days later. The water evaporates and the embedded film is still down there, right where it always was.
So the real question was never how to scrub harder or how much pressure to buy. The real question was what could actually get down into those pores and lift the grime back out. And the answer has been sitting on ordinary store shelves the entire time, costing next to nothing and working through chemistry instead of muscle.
The secret is a compound called sodium percarbonate. The name sounds like a laboratory chemical, specialized and intimidating, but you almost certainly already know it under a much friendlier identity. It's the active ingredient in oxygen bleach, the powdered laundry booster people toss in with their whites to brighten them and pull stains out of fabric. That's the whole secret. The exact same thing that lifts a dinginess out of an old white shirt is remarkably good at lifting the dinginess out of concrete, because at the chemical level, it's doing precisely the same job in both places. And understanding how it works is what turns this from a random tip into something you actually trust enough to pour on your own driveway. When sodium percarbonate dissolves in warm water, it breaks apart into two things: ordinary washing soda and hydrogen peroxide. And that hydrogen peroxide immediately starts releasing what chemists call active oxygen, a rush of oxygen molecules bubbling up out of the solution. This is the part that changes everything, and it's the reason a cheap powder outperforms a machine that costs hundreds of dollars. Those active oxygen molecules don't just sit on the surface waiting to be scrubbed. They penetrate. They travel down into that porous, sponge-like network of channels, following the very same paths the grime took to get in there in the first place. And once they reach the embedded film, they go to work at the molecular level, attacking and breaking apart the bonds that hold the grime together and anchor it to the concrete.
This is a completely different mechanism from anything you're used to, and the distinction matters enormously. Scrubbing tries to physically drag dirt off a surface. Pressure washing tries to blast it off with force. Both are mechanical, and both are limited to wherever the brush or the water can physically reach, which means the surface and nothing deeper. Active oxygen isn't mechanical at all. It's chemical. It dissolves the invisible glue holding the grime in place, deep inside the material, in spots no brush bristle or water jet could ever touch. And once that glue is broken, the discoloration is no longer bound to the concrete. It simply floats up and out of the pores, rising back to the surface where it can finally be rinsed away for good. You're not covering the fade, and you're not just smearing it around. You're genuinely pulling the grime back out of the sponge and uncovering the true color of the concrete that's been hidden underneath the whole time.
Now here's the part that really stings once you understand the chemistry, and it's the reason I started thinking of this as a kind of forbidden knowledge. That exact same sodium percarbonate gets packaged, branded, and sold as premium oxygenated concrete cleaner in the driveway aisle of the hardware store, often for $25 or more per bottle. Walk one aisle over into the laundry section or into any grocery store, and the identical compound, chemically indistinguishable, sits there as oxygen bleach powder for a few dollars. Same molecule, same active oxygen, same reaction, same result on your concrete. The only meaningful difference is the picture on the label, and an enormous markup that depends entirely on you never realizing they're the same thing. Your driveway has no opinion about the packaging. It cannot read the label. It only responds to the chemistry, and the chemistry in the cheap box is exactly the chemistry in the expensive bottle. The biggest factor by far is temperature. Sodium percarbonate is extremely sensitive to how warm the water is. Dissolved in cold water, it barely stirs. The reaction is sluggish and weak, and most of the active oxygen stays locked up, dormant inside the granules, never releasing to do its job. That is the single most common reason people try an oxygen cleaner, see almost nothing happen, and give up. They were unknowingly working with cold, half-asleep solution the whole time. Warm water wakes the compound up and triggers a fast, vigorous, powerful release of oxygen. There's even a visible tell for it. When the solution turns slightly cloudy and hazy as the powder dissolves, that cloudiness is the reaction igniting the oxygen coming to life. Warmth is the ignition switch for this entire process, and it's the difference between a limp fizzle and a deep, aggressive clean. The second factor is the state of the concrete when the solution meets it, and it's a subtle one most people never consider. Bone-dry concrete is intensely thirsty. Poured onto a dry slab, the solution gets pulled unevenly into whichever parched patches drink fastest, vanishing into the material before the active oxygen has a chance to spread out and reach the grime evenly across the whole surface. The result is patchy, some areas reviving beautifully, while others barely change. Concrete that's been dampened first behaves completely differently. The moisture lets the solution glide across the surface and sink evenly into every pore at once, carrying the active oxygen uniformly to every bit of embedded grime. On a faded driveway in particular, where the entire point is restoring an even, uniform color, that difference between a blotchy result and a uniform one is everything. And the third factor is time, and the patience to let the chemistry work without interfering. Active oxygen isn't instant, but it isn't slow either. Once properly activated in warm water on a damp surface, the reaction climbs to full strength quickly and needs a window of roughly 15 to 20 minutes to do the real work of migrating into the pores, reaching the grime trapped deep in the material and breaking the bonds anchoring it in place. This is the complete opposite of the pressure washing experience, where progress is loud and immediate and visible in real time. With oxygen, almost nothing appears to be happening on the surface, and that's exactly where impatient people lose faith and rinse too early, throwing away the reaction right before it finishes. Underneath, out of sight, everything is happening. The only thing that genuinely stops the process is letting the solution dry out completely, because a dried-out solution simply stops reacting. Kept wet and working for that window, the chemistry finishes on its own. When that window is up, the payoff on a faded slab is genuinely striking, and it's different from clearing a single stain. Instead of one spot lifting, the entire surface lifts at once. The grime that dimmed the whole driveway floats up. The rinse water runs off gray and murky with years of accumulated film. And what emerges underneath is the true, original color of the concrete, several shades lighter and brighter than the faded gray you'd resigned yourself to. It doesn't look like a cleaned old driveway. It looks like a different, newer driveway entirely, because you're finally seeing the actual concrete instead of the layer that had been hiding it. Let me be fair, because none of this makes pressure washing or professional services a scam. They offer real convenience, and for people who don't want to learn any of this or do it themselves, that convenience has genuine value. The point is simply that the restoring power itself, the actual thing bringing a faded driveway back to life, isn't special or proprietary or expensive. It's a few dollars of oxygen bleach running the exact same chemistry as the $25 bottle and the $300 service call. When you lay it all side by side, resurfacing runs into the thousands, a professional cleaning runs a few hundred, and this reaches the same faded film. Every one of those pricier options leaves buried in the pores for a few dollars and about 20 minutes of mostly waiting. Your driveway doesn't care what you spent, it only cares about the chemistry doing the work. So if this changes how you see your own faded concrete, subscribe for more and check out my ebook linked in my bio.